Hey, welcome to Encounter Grace, where we help thinking Christians think clearly. I'm Jason McKnight, and I'm here in the studio with Justin Yankee Doodle Dandy Tillman. Justin,
never been called that before.
How are you today on this July 4th week?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, I'm punchy.
Apparently.
Yankee Doodle Dandy, isn't that, don't you have some, I don't know, what is that? Where does that come from? Who is Yankee Doodle Dandy?
I think it was initially a derogatory song towards Americans, but...
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah. See, I don't know. I was born in Canada.
The British coined the song to make fun of us. So,
well, he stuck a feather in his hat
and called it macaroni. I mean, he's an idiot.
Oh,
so.
Well, JFK named his kid's horse Macaroni. Did you know that?
I did not.
Caroline's pony was named Macaroni. A pony named Macaroni. Well, this has gone off the rails. Only 2 minutes in. With July 4th.
Yeah.
At the end of this week, if you're listening to this when it's published within a day or two, I want to take you back to 1775. So this is 2025. So
Hop
we're
in
talking
the Wayback Machine.
250 years ago. And imagine 1775, July 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. The fighting is on. You know, Lexington and Concord was a couple months ago in April. Paul Revere's Ride, and I mean, Longfellow hadn't written the poem yet, but Paul Revere's Ride and all that good stuff. And as late June turns to hot July, the 4th of July in 1775, guess what?
Nothing.
It's just another day on the calendar. Nobody knows about it. But it's the very last year in history where the 4th of July is just a date on the calendar. Because the next year, 365 days later, I mean, on one level, the world started over. I mean, I hate to be too exaggerative or hyperbolic, but July 4th or 4th of July, 1776, it's a big, 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 big day in the history of this country and all countries since then. The announcing of the birth of a new nation, not founded on ethnicity, not founded on geography, not founded on wealth or power, but founded on an idea.
Yeah.
This is an unbelievable thing. And to my understanding, it's the first time in the history of the world that a nation was born founded on an idea. I love this stuff. So 4th of July, actually, it should be the 2nd of July, because didn't they all sign the Declaration of Independence on the 2nd of July, and it was published on the 4th
Yeah, the
of July.
Postal Service took a little bit longer than it does today. So
Who was that?
It was postmarked on the July 1st.
July 2nd.
But
so
the postmaster was busy signing. So
he was busy signing. That's a great trivia question, which I have no idea what the answer is. Who's the first Postmaster General of the U.S.? If you know that, call us, write in, and you'll get the prize. You'll get the prize on Encounter Grace, an Encounter Grace mug, if you know who the first Postmaster General was, except everyone is looking it up online right now.
Yeah.
All 7 of our listeners who are still with us, I guess. That's what we're saying. I love this stuff. I love the idea that 4th of July didn't mean anything in 1775, and it meant something in 1776. And then for 249 years now, it has meant something in the world of people that we live in. I mean, it's just an amazing thing to love your country. I love John Adams. He's the guy that said, we need to celebrate this day with fireworks and noisemakers and feasts and festivals and family and all that kind of stuff. One of his letters, I think, to his wife, Abigail, I don't know who it was to, but just that idea. John Adams is the guy saying fireworks. We want noisemakers. I kind of like that.
Celebrate the day.
We had fireworks. By the way, I grew up in Canada. We had fireworks on the 1st of July.
I was going to say, do you celebrate the 4th of July?
Well, we get the carryover from you guys because we all got American TV. So we got ABC, CBS, NBC, and PBS. And so I got to celebrate Vermont and New York's 4th of July, 3 days after ours. But we always had fireworks on the 1st of July, which is Confederation Day. But let's not talk about that.
Yeah, this isn't about Canada.
We don't want to talk about any other country on the 4th of July week. Come on now. And here's why. Because let's talk about what does it mean to be patriotic?
Yeah.
Which we were talking beforehand. Yeah, every person in their own country is patriotic. Unless they leave their country or hate their country or try to break down their country or whatever. But the idea that you love your home is very normal.
Yeah.
And this is a good thing. But what does it mean to have a healthy patriotism? So I think what we'd love to share today is what does a healthy patriotism look like? And I think also to get us there, we might want to talk about some dangers.
Yeah.
3 areas of danger that we want to avoid, 3 extremes if we're going to talk about healthy patriotism, because there is unhealthy patriotism.
Yeah. Patriotism isn't a dirty word. But you just need to be there. Just like everything else, there are guardrails to stay in. So this is going to be good.
This is going to be good. Don't you, what's your favorite revolutionary quote, or what's your favorite, like, do you have one? Like, I love,
give me liberty, give me death.
Yeah,
man.
there you go. Come on. That's what we want.
Shout that out from the rooftop.
And who was that guy? Was that Paul Revere? Was that
Patrick Henry?
Patrick Henry. See, I'm Canadian. I
Yeah.
don't know. I love Thomas Paine's, from one of his little pamphlets, which I think he was writing more than we're podcasting, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
But the summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will shrink from the services of their country. It's true. I mean, you got to be committed to this thing, this project called freedom.
Yeah.
And we don't want summer soldiers and sunshine patriots. We want people who are ready to roll up their sleeves and make a difference because they love their home. So what we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. And that's true in everything.
That's really good.
So let's see about avoiding 3 extremes and then adopting 4 postures for a healthy patriotism. So, as I think 3 extremes we need to avoid, and one of them is back in the news a bit today, although it's not as much as it used to be 40 years ago or more. But one of the extremes we must always avoid as any people, but specifically Americans, is we cannot equate our country with God's people. We cannot equate America with God's people. When we're reading scripture, when we're thinking prophecy, and of course, the Middle East is back in the news, Iran and Israel and all these things. And by the time we're recording this a week or 2 before 4th of July week, things will have changed dramatically. The point is, we cannot equate what God is doing in the world with America at the center of it.
Yeah.
And a functional equation of America as God's people. I think America is unique for many reasons, and we've said them. You're founded on an idea of God-given liberty, God-given rights. This is new.
Yeah,
But it's not Israel.
Yeah.
It's not the saints. It's not the church.
Yeah, because God cares about every nation.
Yeah.
And I mean, sure, nations that are more or less aligned with his principles and the way he has ordered human flourishing are going to be more or less blessed. But that blessing doesn't equate to being God's chosen nation or anything like that. Because, I mean, the church in America, church in Germany, church in Uganda, in Thailand, he cares about all of those. And so, we always think, God and country, really important. I would argue it's God kingdom country. Yeah. So for us as believers, our primary citizenship is the kingdom. And so with that, we can be very grateful for the country that we live in, but also recognize that God is working in these other nations as well. And they're as important in his economy. And in the church in those other nations, which is interesting. So that's one extreme we need to avoid. And I don't think many people anymore, but you have to keep putting that on record, because I think it's so easy to want to see our footprint in the prophetic word or whatever. Yeah. And I just think, you know what? It's the church that he's working through. I mean, he's working through any government, and he's sovereignly ordaining everything, but his don't equate my country with God's people or God's unique thing. Secondly, and this one has come up more in the last 10 years than we've really seen it before, for a little while anyway, is another extreme we want to avoid in our healthy love of country, which is good. We want to avoid nationalism. What do you mean by nationalism?
It just means selfishness on the national scale. We know that selfishness is bad in a person because it puts the person at the center of the universe. We don't like to be with selfish people. But nationalism puts the country, my country, whatever country it is, above everything else, above everyone else, as better than the others. The rest don't matter. And that's not what healthy patriotism is.
Which
I
think
beyond it.
That's a little bit of the slippery slope of the first thing to avoid is If I start to see, well, my country is God's chosen country, then it's very easy for me to then slip into, well, we're the best. The rest of you don't matter. We're God's, we've got it right. And so I appreciate what you're saying here is you can honor where God's placed you and be grateful for it, but not give too much honor than what's due, and going beyond a love of home into we're the best. We're better than everybody.
So we want to avoid nationalism. Now, the other thing as a sub point here of nationalism is just because someone accuses you of being nationalistic, it does not mean that's true.
That's a good point.
Make sure you're talking about what they're talking about, they're talking about what you're talking about. Yeah. And if it's become one of those words that someone can throw out there and then nobody knows what to do with, so they run away.
Yeah.
So just because someone accuses a public figure or a movement of being nationalist, it is not necessarily, but let's look at what nationalism is and then what the person or the people or me are saying. Yeah. And let's find out if we are being nationalist. But what we're saying today is, as a subject, we don't want to be nationalistic.
Yeah. In its purest form, nationalism.
Yeah. We want to be patriotic, not nationalistic.
Yeah.
Okay, then the third extreme to avoid as we think about our country, our home country, our place that God has put us, is we don't want to equate it with God's people. We don't want to be nationalistic. And then thirdly, we don't want to be apathetic. That would neglect our mission as God's people in our country. Again, when Christians think that God doesn't care about the stuff of our daily lives and he only cares about our souls or the spiritual world, Christians are very Greek at that point.
Yeah.
They're very Platonic. People who think that God is only concerned about the spiritual and the physical doesn't matter. That is Plato through and through. God cares about everything. He cares about the economy. He cares about the suffering of people. He cares about the neighborhood. He cares about how the trash is picked up. He cares about, is the boss being helpful to the employees or harmful to the employees? All those things. God cares about who's in office, administrating the affairs of this community or this state or this country or that country or anything. He cares about it all. And he cares about it eternally, which is why salvation is at the center of his heart, because at the end of the day, who you elect is not the same as how you respond to the gospel.
Yeah.
But who you elect is also on God's radar screen. So as believers, we don't want to be ambivalent towards the country we live in, apathetic towards the community we're in. We want to have a love of community that is not apathetic, without feeling, but that has feeling for the neighbors. I mean, it's just love of neighbor writ large.
That's why I think if you're listening to this and you feel God might be calling you into politics, do it. Yeah. He cares about how a country is run.
Yeah.
And so the Lord wants people in government who honor him. So as Christians, we don't retreat and say, well, that's just a wholly secular political thing. No, get involved for the good of your country and where God has placed you.
Yeah. He wants you involved in politics if you're called to it. He wants you involved in journalism and media if you're called to it. He wants you involved in the academy if you're called to it. These are three areas that I think as Christians continue to seek God and grow into. Like, I feel like the professions, law, medicine, engineering, that kind of stuff, we've got believers there. And as God calls you, keep going. The business world, I think we see a lot of Christians and corporate chaplains of America and C12 and different, Christian business associations, all these things. I think, wouldn't the academy, wouldn't the universities in our country flourish with an infusion of 20% of the faculty as believers? And maybe they already are and they don't know how to speak up. I don't know. But I'm just saying, or wouldn't the media, the broadcast media, the print media, the social media, wouldn't that be amazing? I mean, imagine if 10 believers were among the top 20 people running the algorithms.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the algorithms change overnight. So to your point, we're a little afield from patriotism, but to your point, if God's calling you into these fields of elected service or public administration or media and academics, do it.
His call is never to retreat.
No, it's never to retreat. It's never to retreat. So let's not be ambivalent or apathetic about our home country that he's given to us, about the place that he's granted us to live. So that's some extremes to avoid: nationalism and equating America with God's people and just being apathetic about it all. It doesn't matter because it's all going to burn.
Yeah.
These are extremes to avoid. We don't want them. But what are some ingredients that we can adopt, or some postures that we can begin to live out? What is a biblical and grounded, healthy patriotism? Well, I'm going to offer 4 things. You can offer them too. I just, I just think this, and you already said the word at least 3 times. A healthy patriotism is grateful.
Yeah.
Grateful. A healthy patriotism is grateful. What do we mean there?
Well, God's given us a country to live in. He's given, if we're Americans, He's given us this country to live in. And we should be grateful that we live in a country
Amen.
that has freedom and prosperity and peace and opportunity. We're not perfect, but we have a lot of things that we enjoy in this country that a lot of our brothers and sisters don't. And so we can be grateful for that.
Yeah. There's the freedom and prosperity and opportunity and relative peace that we enjoy, the relative justice that we enjoy, the legal system that we're in. It's a fascinating social experiment to watch over the last 5, 6, 7 years of the conversation surrounding systemic injustice, because even that conversation is something to be grateful for, because we're a country that wants to get better.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, we aren't saying we're going to throw you all in jail if you have that conversation. We're saying, let's get better. Let's figure it out. Nobody likes to be called. But I'm telling you, think about this. If you lived in India, they pretend it's not true, but there are 5 castes that determine your opportunities for daily life in India today.
Yeah.
5
for
castes.
life. Like
for life.
You don't
for the
get
rest
out
of your
of
life.
it. Yeah.
You don't get out of them. In fact, there's a 6th group that's not even a caste. It's outside of the caste system. They're called the Dalits, or the untouchables. And that's hard.
Yeah.
That is hard. Think about the oppression in so many parts of the world where dictators pretend they're elected. 98% of the people voted for me. Where justice systems are so corrupt, filled with bribe-taking judges. Do we ever have bribes in our justice system? Probably. But guess what? When the media shines the light on it, and when the legal system shines the light on it, we take care of it.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's perfect here. I'm saying we're working at it. Whereas these places, some of these places, how about warlords? Some countries are just faction warlords area, or bureaucrats who just rule things through fiat and paperwork and red tape, and they push you back and back. How about cultures and worldviews that conspire to tread people down? You say, oh, well, I think that's true in Hollywood. Well, you can think that's true in Hollywood. Look to Nashville.
Yeah.
Look to Colorado Springs or Dallas. Like when you see the movies that are, anyway, there's so many reasons to give thanks. Look at, do you know slavery was not outlawed in the last country in the Middle East until the 60s?
I didn't know that.
No, because nobody talks about it. But the fact of the matter is, the slave trade from Africa to the Middle East was going on until the 1960s.
Yeah.
Nobody's talking about that, but imagine if that was your life. We have so much to give thanks for in our country, and we'll get to the stuff we don't have to give thanks for. Just give us a minute. But the fact is, a healthy patriotism is worth us giving thanks, and we need to give thanks.
Yeah.
We need to be grateful.
Well, I think too of our brothers and sisters in Haiti. I mean, you've got a pretty much failed state right now. And talking to some of them recently, we were down in the Dominican Republic, talking to some Haitian refugees there, like just to hear stories. It makes you grateful for stepping back on American soil. I when I get to travel internationally, I always joke, I was like, there's no better sound to me than when I walk through customs and the customs agent says, "Welcome home, Mr. Tillman." Like just that sense of, it's not a perfect place, but Lord, thank you that I get the opportunity to be here.
And amen. And who do we give thanks to is exactly what you just said. Lord, thank you.
Yeah.
Lord, thank you. So we're July 4th, but in November there's Thanksgiving, and it's just sad that more and more our public square cultural celebration of Thanksgiving just doesn't mention God. And it's not to be unexpected, but it is sad because we are thankful. A healthy patriotism is grateful, not just to the founding fathers in that generation, not just to the concepts of the Judeo-Christian world and the Enlightenment thought processes and all that kind of stuff that bring us to, we hold these truths to be self-evident. Like, this is a wonderful thing, so we can be thankful. But we're thankful to God because not one of these things that we enjoy is a given.
Yeah.
And all of them can go away at any minute. And so our patriotism needs to be first and foremost grateful to God for what he's done.
And I think that's good and leads us well to the second one, because that taken too far, you can begin to idolize the American concept. Yeah. And I think this second posture that you've got for us helps counterbalance that one.
Yeah.
Which is, healthy patriotism grieves.
Because we have much to be sorrowful for. We have much to mourn. And all of us know it. Like, we're not bashing America. We just get it. We just get it, that we grieve the general loss of a moral compass of our neighbors and fellow citizens. We just grieve that anyway, we grieve for the kids in our neighborhoods and in our towns who barely have a chance, generational poverty that isn't getting better. Like, 1960s, the Great Society legislation was supposed to solve it, but it hasn't.
Yeah.
That's not to say those people were evil to try. That's to say, well, what do we do now? There's something to grieve here. We grieve when there are bribes anywhere up and down the justice system, up and down the electoral system, up and down the administrative state. We grieve for this kind of stuff. We grieve for a population at large that barely cares. I mean, really?
Yeah.
What would we have been part of the 1776 movement? People, if Netflix was around, 1776 would never happen. We grieve our entertainment culture that makes doing well and doing good look stupid.
Yeah.
It's the butt of the jokes, the guy that's doing the right thing. It's too bad because it's training our kids and this cynicism. I grieve that, honestly. The humor of cynicism that I love Seinfeld, and it just jacked it up. It's a show about nothing. And, I love that show. It's hilarious. But I was old enough, like I wasn't brought up on mother's milk of it.
Yeah.
But the cynicism today leading to the nihilism, these are hard things. So let's grieve. It's okay. I mean, it's not that we don't love our country, but it's okay to say things aren't perfect and we grieve.
Yeah. And I think, that's where, even with political differences today, we were talking about this earlier, that at the end of the day, I think we all do, in the best way we understand it, we want the best for the country that we're in. And we're going to have sometimes irreconcilable differences in the way we approach that. But if we can keep these two things in mind, hey, we're grateful to be here. We're grateful the Lord's allowed us to live in this country, in this time. But we all recognize, regardless of where you are on this political spectrum, we recognize there are problems. Mm-hmm. And so how can we work together for this to be the best country it can be while we're stewarding it?
Right.
Is important.
Well, you're moving to the third point, but before we even get there, while we still grieve, is why do we grieve? Not to beat ourselves up, not to say, oh, woe is me, not to say it's hopeless and it'll never change, but because godly sorrow leads to repentance.
Yeah.
And like Nehemiah and like Daniel, they confessed for their country. And this is a great model for us. I mean, Daniel 9, when God announced judgment, when God announced judgment on Nineveh in Jonah, they said, who knows? They repented and they said, who knows? God may yet turn from his fierce anger. They grieved. They put sackcloth and ashes on all of them, even the cattle in Jonah. Us too. Grieving is good if it drives us to our knees, if it causes us to take our country and our countrymen and women and lift them to the throne of grace and say, Lord, would you do a work of grace here? Don't you remember Matthew Henderson? You might remember Matt Henderson. Matt and his sweet wife there, farming now in
Yeah.
New York. They're doing a great work. But he said, we had lunch one day, and he said, when God wants to change a country, he doesn't use the ballot box.
That's
He
good.
uses revival.
Yeah.
And I just thought, man, that is so true. That is 100% true. He uses revival. What is revival? It is God's people on their knees asking for God's grace. And then everything else flows out of that. So a godly patriotism is grieving for the things that need to be grieved because it drives us to pray.
Yeah.
So godly patriotism is grateful, all the wonderful things that he's given us. It's grieving because things aren't perfect yet, and may we lean on him. Now, there's two others. The third one is a healthy patriotism is hard working. We've kind of alluded to this. You dance around all of this, but hey, it takes work to love your country.
Yeah.
It takes day in, day out, roll up your sleeves, hard work. A lot of people end their emails, a lot of Christians end their emails with Jeremiah 29:11. I know the plans I have for you, plans for your welfare and not for evil, to give you a hope and a future. And I love that verse. It's a wonderful verse. Jeremiah wrote it by God's Spirit to the exiles living in Babylon. So they're not in Jerusalem. It's not a Christian nation. They're in a pagan nation. They're in Babylon. They've been exiled for their sin or the sin of their nation. And now they're over there in Babylon. But Jeremiah says, God says, I know the plans I have for you, for your welfare, not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. That's verses 11 and 12, Jeremiah 29. If you go backwards to see what he says before then, this is what God says to those same exiles in Babylon 3 verses earlier. I sent you to this place. So build houses, live in them, plant gardens, eat their produce, take your wives, have children, multiply there. Seek the welfare of the city that I sent you to in exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf. In its welfare, you'll find your welfare.
Yeah.
This is a hard-working invitation God has for them. Build houses, live in them, plant gardens, eat the produce, have kids, have generations, multiply there, seek the welfare of the city. That's what he's inviting us to. Make a difference in Babylon.
Yeah.
I mean, come on now.
So don't just grieve, do something about it.
Yes, do something about it. I think this is one of the things. Again, of the two of us, I'm the one that's lived in 2 different countries and love 2 different countries, and kind of have patriotism in 2 different countries. But I will say this: when I moved to the U.S. I was 26, so 26 years in Canada, and now 26 years in the U.S. When I moved to the U.S., I found the people more ready to step in and do something, more ready to complain, more ready to take action, more ready to demonstrate or make vocal. I think we should do it this way. They're just more ready to step out. They're, in other words, taking it on themselves to do something. I noticed that difference in the general population. It doesn't mean there's something morally deficient in my friends in Canada. And I can't say I know all 40 million Canadians. It doesn't at all. It just means there's something in the water that says, hey, let's make a life here. Let's make a life here.
Yeah.
That's fun. I love it. Can I quote JFK?
I mean, you're in charge, so yeah.
Am I allowed to? I think JFK had a lot of things not going for him.
Yeah.
But one of the things he did really well was he had a great speechwriter.
Yeah.
And he delivered speeches great. And his inaugural address, we'll say his inaugural address, he spoke a lot about the hard work that's before us. And
I like this.
Just a couple of these. Let the word go forth from this time and place to friend and foe alike. And you can see that cold January day, 1961. He's up there on the outdoors without a top coat on. It's freezing out. It's like -10 or Celsius. So I don't know what that would be in Fahrenheit. I was Canadian when I was watching this. Let the word go forth from this to friend and foe alike. The torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century, tempered by war, disciplined by a hard and bitter peace, proud of our ancient heritage and unwilling to witness or permit the slow undoing of those human rights to which this nation has always been committed. And a little later he says, let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe, in order to assure the survival and the success of liberty. This much we pledge and more. So my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. I just think these are fantastic words.
Yeah.
Fantastic, stirring words that if you can hear the Boston accent, it's even better. Liberty. One of my friends in Montreal, he said, God does the work, but we do the homework.
I like that.
So the healthy patriotism is also hardworking. One more thing on this. I love the quote from G.K. Chesterton when he said, men didn't love Rome because she was great. Speaking of ancient Rome, men didn't love Rome because she was great. She was great because men loved her. And I love that. I love that. Last night I was walking the dog with the family. We were walking around the block, came back, and my next door neighbor who had moved here within the last year and a half, and he was bringing out his trash, and he said, hey, I love looking at your yard. It looks so nice. And thank you for making it look so nice. Makes all of our yards look nice. And, I don't think our yard looks that nice. We got a few shrubs. We keep them trimmed. I mow the lawn once a week and all that kind of stuff. And we're not in the garden club by any stretch, but keep the pine straw nice and keep the lawn and blah, blah. What's he saying there? Well, why am I doing that? Am I doing that am I doing all that hard work on that lawn because I'm trying to prove I'm the number one on the street or be in the garden club, win the blue ribbon? No, I just love my home.
Yeah.
I just think it looks nicer when you keep the thing a little bit mowed and, you trim that azalea once or twice a year kind of thing. Like it's not, men didn't love Rome because she was already great. She got great because men loved her. Yeah. I think that's a wonderful thing.
Which I think for us as believers who want to have a healthy patriotism, then the question becomes, Lord, what would you have me do for the welfare of the country in which you've placed me?
Yep.
Because it goes back to a healthy love of country. And we've talked about before, biblical love is a commitment to someone's good, regardless of the cost. And so I think healthy patriotism is that a good love of country is, Lord, there are things that aren't perfect here. So what would you have me do? And that might require some hard things or some discomfort on my end, but I love you and I love this place you've placed me in. You've called me to seek its welfare. So what does that look like for me in this season, whether that's politics or education or wherever he's calling you to be?
Well, and whether it's small things. So you're right. I'm so glad you didn't just stop at politics, but start talking education or other community involvement, because it is not about just elected office.
Yeah,
that is not. That is part of it, but it's not everything. But man, if you see your neighborhood needs a boost, what can you do? How can you band together as neighbors? If your kids, so many people in our community read to kids in the public schools in the early grades, because if you don't get it by second or third grade, you don't learn to read. So there's so many adults that go in to different public schools and read 20 minutes a week with the same kid.
Yeah.
And over the course of the school year, they meet with them almost every week. That's a love of country and a love of community and a love of neighbor. That's a healthy patriotism.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. I think of our friend who serves on the Parks and Recs committee. She loves the Parks and Rec. She just loves it. And so she served on the Parks and Rec committee for many years. And why? It's thankless. It's thankless.
I do love the show Parks and Rec now.
Well, but all you get is complaints from people.
Yeah.
But you're helping the baseball and the soccer happen and all the different parks, and you're bringing, it's just a wonderful thing.
You're helping
that's
people
patriotism.
Flourish.
You're helping people flourish. So a healthy patriotism is hardworking. And if we keep saying, well, the government ought to fix it, that's not patriotism.
Yeah.
And if we keep saying, it'll never change, that's not patriotism. But saying, well, Lord, what can I do? And to your point, small things or big things.
Yeah.
Then the last one is a healthy patriotism, grateful, grieving, hardworking, and then hope-filled. Hope-filled. So this is crucial because we might be in exile in Babylon, but we have hope. As we're grateful for the country and grieving for what's wrong and working hard to follow it. And it doesn't always work right when you work hard. Things don't always go right. But in the end, we have hope because our future is not bound up with this economy, this political system, this country, this anything, because our patriotism is strongest when we love our here and now country because of the country that never ends. Hebrews 11 talks about the hall of faith, and Abraham and Sarah left their homeland and they moved to this place and they started loving this place, even though they never owned anything in this place, the Levant or the what became Israel. They never owned anything there except a cemetery plot. But they loved the people there. They raised their family there. They lived as exiles and strangers there, looking for a better country whose foundation was in Christ, whose builder and architect was God, longing for a heavenly one. If we forget that our timeline is eternity, our patriotism will become all-consuming or will be apathetic and ambivalent and hopeless.
Which is where we have that temptation to be drawn too closely and tied too closely to political outcomes or culture wars or things like which are not unimportant.
Well, as the hardworking part.
Yeah, but when we keep this in mind that, hey, we work for the good of the country that we live in, but our citizenship ultimately is in heaven and the king who reigns now and will come back. And for me, as I think about patriotism and I look at this country that I love so very much, recognizing there are so many shortcomings, I'm also able to look at that and go, well, Lord, one day you're going to set all that stuff right. So I will work as hard as I can in the areas that you've called me to bring as much flourishing as I can in the however long you give me here. But I also am hopeful that the day is coming when for every nation you will wrap it all up in justice and love and every wrong will be righted. And I don't know, that gives me a sense of freedom as I look at, gosh, the list of things to work on is so long. But I can still enjoy the country that I'm in and be hopeful that the day is coming when it's all going to be made right.
Well, because the list of things to work on in my marriage is so long, but I can still enjoy my marriage today.
Yeah.
So amen and yes. Well, the two of the biggest names, I mean, George Washington is one and Ben Franklin, but then two of the biggest names are John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, the second and the third president. They were both at the Declaration of Independence. They were both involved, all that kind of stuff. These two guys were on opposite sides politically, and they were against each other. So this is, fun. And if anyone's watched Hamilton or whatever, you kind of see some of that stuff. John Adams, I know him, and all that fun stuff. Do you know these two guys, the second and the third president of this country, they died on the same day? I mean, I didn't grow up in American schools. Maybe every kid knows this in school. They died on the same day. It was the date, July 4th.
Yep.
It was July 4th, 1826, 50 years after they were gathered together in the delivery room of a nation in Philadelphia as they birthed a nation. John Adams and Thomas Jefferson had a great writing friendship. After they both were out of office, they reconciled and had a great back and forth pen pal relationship. And near the end of their lives, John Adams wrote this great little line to Thomas: "My friend, you and I have lived in serious times." And I think that's true. And these two guys that died on the same day, 50 years into this new nation, on the birthday of the nation, it's true for them. It's true for us. We also live in serious times. And it takes a thoughtful love of our country, a thoughtful patriotism, not just for our country, but for our community.
Yeah.
And then for our world larger. And it's time for us to be grateful properly, grieving where we must, hardworking, but hope-filled, that as Christ is revealed in more lives, people will see him more. So, on the 4th of July, I think we all need to go get some fireworks and noisemakers to keep John Adams happy.
That's right.
I think we need to get some apple pie and hot dogs.
I'm going to go rent a horse and ride up and down the street.
Macaroni.
Yeah. Get a feather, stick it in my cap.
I didn't mean to dog you at the front, Yankee Doodle, Justin.
Well, we wore it as a badge of courage, badge of honor. So
that's what you see. That's what Trump taught everyone. Just turn everything into something good. I don't know, but I'm glad to be an exile here on earth.
Yeah,
I'm glad to be a stranger. My life is not bound up with anything on earth except Jesus. When I'm faithful to him, I can love my environment better, my community, my family, my state, my country. and the people of this world, giving thanks, grieving, working hard, and hope.
So have a happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th of July, and we'll see you next year on this date.
Yeah.
Take care.